Grand Portage Resources recently completed the 2018 drill program on its 100% controlled Herbert Gold Discovery property located in the prolific Juneau Belt in southeast Alaska. Drill results are expected through late 2018. Past drill results included numerous multi-ounce gold assays on multiple veins. Grand Portage trading symbols are GPG on the TSX Venture, GPTRF on the OTCQB, and GPB on Frankfurt. For more information, please visit our website, grandportage.com.
Welcome to the Goddard Report. Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. Here is Jim Goddard.
My guest is Jordan Bateman, Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. His website, icba.ca. Welcome back to the show, Jordan.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jim. And Jim, do you hear that sound? It's Gregor Robertson and Derek Corrigan in political obscurity.
Well, of course, we knew about Robertson didn't run, but Corrigan getting voted out in Burnaby, that's a huge change there because he was Mr. Permanent Mayor.
Well, yeah, and often he'd rack up, 75, 80% support in elections. It's not like there's been a steady downward trend in his support levels. Mike Hurley out Corrigan. He went out there, he got the labor groups on his side, he got the firefighters on his side, he just kept picking off all these groups who, for so many years, supported Derek Corrigan. And, I've heard rumors that even some members of Derek Corrigan's slate voted for Mike Hurley because they wanted to change at the top.
What kind of change are they going to get? What was the big issue?
Well, the big issue that gets a lot of the media attention around the region in Burnaby, of course, are the so-called demo evictions. And we actually have a front row seat to this. Where I work at ICBA, we're on the 7th floor of a tower in Metrotown. And, I can look out the windows and see the neighborhood where these demo evictions occur. And, they're low-rise, very old stock apartment buildings, often 2 or 3 stories tall, very clearly, 40-plus years old. And slowly but surely, they're being taken down, and those tenants being moved on, and then torn down, and then, shiny new condo towers emerge. Metrotown, I think, is actually for all of Corrigan's many faults and lefty leanings, the planning of Metrotown actually is one of his great shining successes. I mean, they've leveraged the rapid transit line. They've made sure they have density and services and all in one place, jobs and people and recreation within walking distance. But, the longer he was in power, the less he seemed to hear from average everyday people about, what the effect was on them and the less he did to try to help them.
Well, Burnaby also accrued a $1 billion surplus by all the development fees, which the city said, see, it's working well. What other city can brag about having $1 billion surplus and the lowest property tax hikes in Canada?
Yeah, I don't know if they have the lowest property tax hikes in Canada. They still increased every year by, more than the cost of living went up. But, look, you're sitting on $1 billion.
I was just quoting the mayor there.
Oh, you're quoting the mayor. Yeah, he'd like to say it. But for what purpose are you sitting on this $1 billion? Like, put it into infrastructure or give it back to the taxpayers. There's no point having that kind of. You want to have healthy reserves. You don't want to have ridiculous reserves when you have people struggling with affordability in your community.
What can the mayors do to make housing more affordable, do you think?
Well, first thing they got to do is look in the mirrors and go in there. Now, we have a whole crop of new mayors. I'm hoping that they're not going to be as hostage to the bureaucracy as the people they replaced are. We always hear from Gregor Robertson and Greg Moore and Derek Corrigan that it was everyone else's fault, the rising cost of housing. But they never ever looked in the mirrors at City Hall and said, our red tape, our slow approval processes, our forcing millions and millions of dollars of holding costs, our here you have Burnaby bragging about having $1 billion in the bank, overcharging developers. That all impacts the bottom line. And if you want to make housing more affordable, I think that mayors would have a lot more credibility if they came out and started addressing the delays that their city hall imposes. I think that would be a very positive step and would be well received by many of the other levels or the other two levels of government who they're constantly criticizing.
Well, and we also had Vancouver City Council. There was a proposal to have modular 275 square foot housing for the homeless, and they said, no, that's inhumane because it's tiny. Well, I thought it'd be like living in a camper, which some people gladly do because they think it's fun. And if you're living in a shopping cart, I think 275 square feet would look pretty good to you.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere, and the hope is that housing like that isn't like the long-term solution for everyone. But it's housing is a continuum, right? You start somewhere and you kind of work your way up. Well, the first place to start is get a roof over your head, and for a lot of these people, Gregor Robertson's famous promise to eradicate homelessness by 2015, and instead it was at historic levels. There's a lot more that can be done.
Well, I wanted to talk to him about that, and of course, famously, his 43-person PR department could not find 10 minutes for him to talk to me, and that was 3 years ago.
Yeah, well, good riddance to Gregor Robertson. He was, I think he's one of the worst mayors Vancouver ever had. His communications department tried to spin how wonderful and green he was, but he was anything but. And he's made Vancouver, especially downtown, so bloody difficult to get into that, he's hurt his own small businesses because people aren't able to get there and spend money and, visit the downtown like they once did. So, you're not going to hear me say a good word about Gregor Robertson. He tried to ban natural gas, at the same time, whining and crying about, how unaffordable life was in Vancouver. And yet he was always constantly trying to make it more expensive. So I found him to be a hypocrite. I'm glad he's gone. I think Vancouver's better off for it. I'm no fan of Kennedy Stewart, but certainly there's a very low bar in my books for him to try to get over to be better than Gregor Robertson.
Well, apparently Kennedy Stewart has a degree in economics. Maybe he understands bottom lines better than most.
Judging by his stand on Trans Mountain, I wouldn't bet on it.
Right. Now, what about the money that Burnaby and Vancouver have spent fighting a pipeline that we know is going to be built eventually if they jump through all the latest hoops and whatever? What has that done to the people who live in those cities? How much does it cost them? Because they won't say.
Yeah, I think it's got to be hundreds of thousands, if not more than $1 million. Look, the pipeline doesn't even run through Vancouver. That's the funny thing, right? Vancouver, it terminates in Burnaby, and yet Vancouver is leading the charge against it. You have the Burnaby mayor now has been turfed out. He very much was associated with that issue. I think the public in Burnaby got tired of it. And yeah, there's a small group of anti-pipeline activists who will find any reason they can to stir up trouble, but that's not going to, it's not sustainable. It certainly isn't the majority of Burnabyites. It's certainly not the majority of Vancouverites. And it's definitely not the majority of British Columbians.
Wasn't Kinder Morgan one of the biggest property taxpayers in Burnaby and also one of the major employers? Yeah,
imagine being a major employer and a major taxpayer and cutting a check every year to the civic government who wants to eradicate you. That must have been a hard, they must have really bit their tongues from time to time and did that. I don't know why the left has to look down on oil and gas and construction jobs the way they do. Everything has to be about the techie green economy. You know what? Those buildings housing all that tech, all those tech companies have to be built by someone. All the computers and whatnot have to be powered by something, and that comes back to good old-fashioned blue-collar workers.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after the break.
Arctic Star Exploration, operated by a team of proven mine finders, is focused on diamonds in Finland and the Northwest Territories of Canada. Work programs are underway in Finland and Canada. Arctic Star trades on the TSX Venture Exchange symbol ADD, on Frankfurt symbol 82A1, and the OTCQB symbol ASDZF. Please visit our website arcticstar.ca or call us at 604-689-1799.
I'm Brian Fowler, president of Blind Creek Resources Limited, listed on the TSX Venture Exchange, ticker symbol BCK. Blind Creek is focused in the Yukon, Northwest Territories, and British Columbia. The company's key property is the Blend Project, one of the largest undeveloped lead zinc silver deposits in Western Canada, plus plans to advance the recently acquired, fully permitted historic Engineer Gold Mine in the Atlan District of Northwestern BC. Check us out at blindcreekresources.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, the Surrey election, old Mayor Doug McCallum back in in style again and in the mayor's chair. He's pro SkyTrain, anti LRT. Does it matter to the Construction Association whether you're building light rail or SkyTrain?
Probably not. I mean, there's benefits to both systems. As a guy who's studied this for a long time, I'm very surprised at how expensive TransLink says light rail will be. One of the big benefits of light rail was that it was supposed to be so much cheaper than SkyTrain, as much as 30 or 40% of the cost. That certainly is not the way that TransLink has budgeted this. So, I do think there's something fishy there that, journalists should be digging more into. As far as we're concerned, there's jobs either way. Certainly want to continue to improve infrastructure around the region, and we want every person, every worker in the construction industry, whether union or not, to have the opportunity to bid on that work.
I think the reason a lot of people favor SkyTrain, though, is it's up and out of the traffic and it moves very rapidly. I live in New Westminster and I can get into downtown Vancouver in 24 minutes. You can't do that with a surface rail thing because they're tied up in traffic just like everything else.
Yeah, I mean, it depends how it's laid out. There are parts of Surrey where the boulevards are wide enough you could have dedicated lanes. Look, if light rail was cheaper, you could technically go much further in the system. I think that would be the benefit. But Surrey First was clearly on the wrong side of the people on this issue. They want SkyTrain. Surrey First could not seem to get into their minds that, maybe they didn't know best on this, and that we live in a representative democracy, and at some point the people get to vote on how you're representing them. So, Surrey First got a bit arrogant there towards the end.
We'll have more with Jordan Bateman right after this.
Hi, I'm Douglas Mason, President and CEO of Magnum Gold Corp, MGI and the TSX Venture Exchange. A 2015 drill program on the LH property intersected several high-grade gold intersections, including 11 meters of 20.66 grams per ton gold. Additional drill targets on the LH property have been identified by a 2018 drone airborne magnetic survey to further evaluate a pyrrhotite-enriched gold-bearing system. Please visit our website at magnumgoldcorp.com.
Don't miss out. Stay informed. Receive the HowStreet.com weekly recap with thought-provoking podcasts, radio, and articles delivered to your inbox. Sign up for the HowStreet.com weekly recap on our homepage at HowStreet.com.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Jordan Bateman. Jordan, the tariffs on steel, it's not going to help anybody if you have high costs. We had the vice president of Ford Motor saying that U.S. steel is the priciest steel in the world because of the tariffs Donald Trump has imposed. What about Canada and the impact of steel tariffs here on construction and jobs?
Yeah, Canada has retaliated against the U.S. by adding more tariffs to our steel. Listen, anything that drives up the price of steel is bad news for taxpayers and for consumers, because you drive up the price of steel. Look outside the window, every piece of infrastructure, all those shiny condos, every highway, every road, every SkyTrain line, every major public project is a massive consumer of steel. And so if you make steel more expensive, steel rebar becomes more expensive, the bottom line becomes more expensive. And you're going to talk about, if these tariffs continue to grow and stay for a long term, you're going to talk about adding thousands of dollars per condo unit just in more steel costs. There'll be no benefit to the consumer. There's no difference, tariff steel versus non-tariff steel. It's just more expensive. And it's one of these examples of where government's really got to get their head around affordability and say, look, this is one of these policies that is making life more unaffordable.
Ottawa says it's going to proceed with its carbon tax on the 4 provinces that didn't want it. However, the residents of those provinces will also get a rebate from Ottawa. BC's had a carbon tax for 10 years. Will we get a rebate?
I doubt it. The interesting thing is that until the NDP took over, that carbon tax was generally returned in tax cuts, grants to companies, film industry things, some corporate subsidies that frankly I have a lot of personal problems with. But at the very least, you could draw the through line from carbon tax revenue being returned to some sort of person or business. That ended when the NDP took power. Now that the last carbon tax increase and every carbon tax increase from now on will not be revenue neutral. I'd like to think that we would see a check coming back to us, but given the way, and frankly I think Justin Trudeau is being a little disingenuous, given the way the Trudeau government works and the Horgan government works, if we do get any money back, it'll be, it won't be tied. It won't be for everyone. It'll be tied to very specific groups of people that they want to buy favor with.
The proportional representation referendum coming up in British Columbia. What's your association's position?
Well, we're fighting this thing tooth and nail. Listen, one of the big things is prop rep countries have a higher percentage of economic growth that's driven by government than by the private sector. So in Canada, it's something like 22% of our GDP has to do with government. In prop rep countries in Europe, it's more like 30%. That is bad news. Bigger bureaucracies mean more red tape, means slower economic growth, means more money in the hands of politicians and bureaucrats and less money in the hands of the private sector and individuals who are able to do with it what they want. We don't want prop rep. Too many coalition governments, too many examples of extremists in Europe coming to power and being bought off by governing coalitions. You want to see how many neo-Nazis there are in British Columbia. You want to see how many anti-immigrant people there are in British Columbia. Go to prop rep and they'll form their party and, they'll start claiming seats in the House. This is not good news for business. Certainly not good news for individuals who love British Columbia.
Why isn't it good news for business?
Well, it creates instability. So look, political stability often breeds economic stability and growth. And it's because people make, investment decisions in British Columbia are not made based on 1 year or 2 years. They're based on 20 years or 40 years or 100 years, however long that money is expected, that company is expected to be in British Columbia. So you want to have as stable a governmental system as possible. Northern Ireland is a proportional representation democracy. They have not had a government since January 2017. They're like 620 days without a government. Belgium went 589 days without a government. It's not uncommon for even quote-unquote stable proportional representation countries to go 3, 4, 5, 6 months without a government. That does not instill a lot of confidence in investors.
Do you think that's been clearly explained to people going into this referendum?
I think it's one of the arguments against it. I think, the extremist argument is also one that gets explained a lot. I think the fact that these rules are very vague, the NDP and Greens have purposely tried to rig this referendum to get prop rep through because at the end of the day, they form a committee that, set all the rules for the next election based on that system. And you can bet self-interested politicians will set it up to make sure that their own parties win. They'll rejig it and make sure it happens. So, yeah, there's lots of reasons to vote against prop rep. Look, no one thinks, I shouldn't say no one. I certainly don't think first past the post is perfect. I think there's ways to improve it and certainly to improve government accountability. But, throwing out that system that has served Canada for, 100 and something years, that served British Columbia so well, that has been solid in the United Kingdom. Let's not throw out a system that works and can be improved to go with untested, NDP tweaked, NDP torqued systems like prop rep.
Do you think just having 3 members of the Green Party basically control the NDP is an example of what would happen under proportional?
Yeah, look, so all you have to get is 5% of the vote, and then you get at least 5 seats in the legislature. So, think of the 20 people you had at Thanksgiving dinner. Was one of them crazy? Is one of them have views that you wouldn't necessarily want represented in the legislature? Probably. All it takes is one racist party, one anti-immigration party to get 5% of the vote, and all of a sudden they have 5 seats in the House, and they have to be bought off by one of these other parties in order to enter a governing coalition. First past the post works because it forces people into big tent parties where you can knock off the fringe extremist elements and, find platforms and positions that attract a broad range of people. You do this, you're going to splinter BC regionally, you're going to splinter BC over social issues. This will be a mess that we'll regret for a long, long time.
The rollout of legal pot in BC might be pretty disappointing for people. Only one store was open in Kamloops. Was this poorly organized?
Look, this is the biggest public policy shift in decades. I'm not sure it could ever be flawless. it is weird that there's only one store in all of British Columbia. Why not? You had all these little private stores going. Why not try to work with them better? But that is, of course, not the way the NDP does business. They hate private. they don't believe in the private sector. They'd much rather have everything in government's hands.
Well, if it's supposed to be in government stores, I haven't seen any space being renovated in the government liquor stores I've been in.
Yeah, well, great question. I guess they're still working on it. I mean, it'll take time. It'll take time to work this all through. There's still workplace issues that are being dealt with on drug and alcohol policies. How does safety work? What do people have the right to, employers have the right to ask? This is going to take years to unfold, and, you got to expect that, a public policy shift this big is going to be a little bit messy.
Does the Independent Contractors and Business Association have an official workplace policy?
Yeah, so we actually sent out to our members a document crafted in part by our legal experts for both small and large businesses as to how safety trumps everything else. In the end, legal marijuana is no different than alcohol. You can't show up to work drunk and expect to drive the bulldozer. You can't show up to work high and expect to drive a bulldozer. So, it's very similar to your alcohol policies. We're confident in it. That said, there is no law around this yet, and who knows how judges are going to interpret things. And you can bet there'll be a bunch of cases that will come through over the coming years to try to test it. So, we feel like our members are in a good position, but you have to wait and see exactly what the courts do.
Well, the Vancouver police position on their employees is fit for duty. Is that basically your position, fit for duty?
Yeah, look, safety comes first. Safety for those cops comes first. Safety for construction workers. You have to be able to trust the guy next to you, that you're not going to be hurt. We're talking about massive pieces of equipment. Often you're up in the sky. There's all sorts of things that can go wrong. Safety is paramount, so you can't be impaired. And if there's a medical reason why you're being treated with cannabis or another kind of mood-altering drug, you do have a duty to discuss that with your employer, and the employer has a duty to make it work for you. But just that kind of casual marijuana use needs to be treated the same as alcohol, and you got to be careful.
Jordan, thank you so much for chatting with us.
Thanks for having me.
My guest has been Jordan Bateman, Communications Director for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. His website, icba.ca. If you have any questions for Jordan or any of our other guests, you can send them to info@housestreet.com. I'm Jim Goddard. Thanks for listening.
Comments made on the Goddard Report and TalkDigitalNetwork.com are an expression of opinion only. The Goddard Report is available online and mobile at TalkDigitalNetwork.com. The Goddard Report is a production of House Street Media Incorporated.